The Galactic Empire stood unchallenged. It had consumed systems, rewritten civilizations, and buried descent beneath layers of steel, protocol, and fire. There were no myths left. No gods, no exceptions. Only the supreme leader and the will of the machine. Until they found the signal. It was weak, buried beneath centuries of space debris and radiation, originating from a sector long red-lined as unstable. Designation: Terra, a planet once marked as a Class 5 death world, then forgotten after early expeditions failed to return. Some claim magnetic anomalies. Others blame primitive biological agents. The truth was lost in bureaucracy, but the signal repeated. Every 13.13 hours, a repeating pulse, low frequency, analog. Something ancient, something alive. The Empire did not ask questions. It issued orders. Fleet 7X, equipped with suppression teams and Psylocke containment chambers, entered the solar system on Cycle 5. They expected an irradiated ruin. They found silence. Satellites were gone. Orbit was choked with the wreckage of artificial megastructures, all rusted through. The planet's surface was green, overgrown, and moving. Sensors failed to lock onto stable coordinates. Thermal scans glitched into impossible heat signatures that faded like ghost echoes. Data was contradictory, implying active life signs and total extinction simultaneously. They descended anyway. The cabin stood in the middle of an ancient forest. Tall trees bent inward, not with gravity, but intention. The structure itself was wrong, not just old, but outside of design logic. It wasn't built. It was remembered. Its dimensions shifted when not directly observed. Inside sat an old woman. She did not stand when they entered. She smiled. Not welcoming, not hostile, just amused. "Are you lost?" she asked, her voice dry and weathered. Sergeant Hale spoke fluent dialects of 200 worlds. He froze. His helmet's translator failed. The words bypassed tech. She spoke directly to the ear, to the part of the brain that remembered nursery rhymes it never learned. They called for backup. She stepped outside, without resistance. The trees made way. The sky dimmed. Time lagged by 4 seconds around her. Equipment logged this. Imperial logic dismissed it. They sedated her, monitored vitals, blood sample unreadable, flagged as corrupted. No matches in galactic databanks. DNA curled in fractal patterns that collapsed scanners. She was secured in reinforced titanium cells, shielded against psionics, radiation, and mimetic contamination. Cameras worked until they didn't. Then they showed her smiling. Then they showed her cabin again. Then they went black. No guard were harmed. They simply left. They walked out of the base and disappeared. One turned up 20 hours later in a cargo bay, cradling a chicken and speaking backwards. The Empire dismissed it as psychological contamination, scheduled full cognitive resets for personnel, prepared a direct audience for the Supreme Leader. In the interim, the woman remained quiet. She brewed tea in a cup no one gave her. She spoke to walls and shadows. Sometimes, shadows replied. Dr. Kavari, lead xenopsychologist, volunteered for first contact. She asked a simple question, "What are you?" The woman replied, "I am what follows when you've forgotten to be afraid." Dr. Kavari slit her own throat during the next sleep cycle. The log showed her smiling. Interrogation turned to isolation. The woman aged in reverse. Sometimes young, sometimes ageless. Sometimes she wasn't in the cell at all. The next moment she was... Internal AI began recursive logic loops. It composed sonnets in lost Earth dialects, all referencing the same phrase. The crone watches. A mid-ranking analyst located a forgotten Terran file. Pre-collapse folklore. Baba Yaga. A witch from Earth myth. Archetype of chaos, transformation, death, and rebirth. A thing that lived in a house with legs. A thing that could bless or destroy, based on whim. The Supreme Leader received this summary without expression. He dismissed a myth, but not the subject. She would be brought to him, the last remnant of a forgotten species. He would bend her as he bent worlds. The transit vessel never reported arrival. A secondary vessel deployed to recover it found the ship empty, with no damage, no crew, and a lone teacup in the command chair. Baba Yaga was already on the throne world. She had arrived. No logs, no detection. One moment, nothing. The next, reports from Level 0. A woman had walked into the Citadel unopposed. Footage failed. Communications blurred. The central command system played Slavic lullabies over internal comms. The Supreme Leader ordered a sweep. 10 elite security nodes initiated containment. They reached the central atrium. They found nothing, except, hours later, themselves, in the woods, on Earth. Somehow, not just hallucinations. Their armor was corroded by Earth-specific flora. Insects from a long-dead biome clung to their boots. One soldier was missing his eyes. Another grew feathers overnight. A tribunal met. High advisors argued for extermination, orbital strikes, planetary glassing. But the Supreme Leader forbade it. She was already inside. A secondary attempt at contact was made. Through drone intermediaries, projected holographs, AI linguistic frameworks. The woman spoke directly to the hologram. The drone exploded. The leader initiated direct communication, personal, isolated, through the most secure channel in the galaxy. She smiled. "Little Czar," she said, "you still think you are the story." He said, "Nothing. You think you build empires. But you only gather wood for my fire." The signal collapsed. The Supreme Leader did not speak for several hours. When he did, he ordered silence. The woman would be brought to him, physically. No projection, no remote contact. His will was law. Elite Guard 12, twice trained, exo-augmented, mind-hardened, escorted her. She walked freely. The Citadel grew colder. Structures sweated moisture. Vines bloomed in steel corridors. Lights dimmed. Gravity pulsed irregularly. They placed her outside the Emperor's throne chamber. She sat on the floor and began to hum. People across the planet began humming in response. They didn't know why. Emergency protocols initiated. The planetary core began to shift. Weather systems destabilized. Time fractures appeared in quantum drives. Civilian dreams reported a forest, a hut with legs, and a voice offering soup. The Emperor prepared the final confrontation. He had spoken to void lords, enslaved star eaters, rewritten planetary cultures. This was just a woman. Human. Weak. He looked into the monitor. She looked back, and she laughed. Not mockery. Not joy. Something older. Something that knew. The laughter cracked mirrors in his chamber. Crushed audio receptors. Froze servomotors. The Emperor did not move. For the first time in recorded galactic history, he experienced fear. It wasn't her power. It was what she represented. She had not come from a myth. She was the myth. And she had let herself be found. Because it was time. He felt it then. The truth. The Empire was not at its height. It was at its end. And the story wasn't about him. It never had been. The Emperor stared into silence, long after the laughter ended. His private chamber, shielded from cosmic radiation and entropy-level events, now housed something more dangerous. Doubt, not in others, in himself. It crept in quietly like her, and it would not leave. No alert had been issued. No alarms rang. Yet across the throne world, things began to fail. Infrastructure misaligned. Gravity weakened in corridors. Entire sectors lost synchronized timekeeping. The Citadel's central logic core began responding in riddles, each answer ending with a Slavic proverb that didn't exist in any archive. Advisors spoke in hushed panic. One removed his eyes after claiming to see her shadow on the back of his own thoughts. Another froze mid-sentence and began weeping for a grandmother he never had. They were dismissed, sanitized, rewritten. The Emperor didn't blink. He demanded to know who she truly was. The records department collapsed under the strain of parsing pre-Empire Earth mythos. Cross-referencing took hours, then days. But eventually, data fragments converged. Baba Yaga wasn't a being. She was a force. An archetype bore the oldest human instinct, survival through terror. She punished, protected, and twisted reality according to laws no science could anchor. She walked between life and death, chaos and wisdom. Not a god, Worse, a story that couldn't be killed. The emperor forbade the use of her name. She remained seated outside his chamber. No food, no sleep, no aging. Occasionally, she would hum. The citadel lights dimmed in rhythm. Stars flickered outside their natural pattern. Planetary orbit shifted by 0.2 degrees. Enough for astronomers to panic. Enough to mean nothing. Then came the disappearances. The warden of the penal moons vanished mid-transmission. Entire prison sectors ceased to exist. Not destroyed, gone. No explosion. No remnants. Only a faint scent of pine needles, and a child's laugh across audio logs. The Emperor ordered psychic extraction teams to probe her. They tried. 6 minds imploded. The 7th vanished, but left behind her uniform folded on the floor, with a chicken feather inside. Panic infected the Empire's heart. Scientists argued she wasn't physical. Philosophers claimed she was history itself, returning to collect her due. Technocrats demanded force. The Emperor listened but did not speak. He initiated the Phobos Protocol. The Empire's reality anchors, 37 constructs hidden in deep space folds, each stabilizing galactic causality through quantum constant reinforcement, were activated. Her influence would be limited. They flickered offline within minutes. One anchor reported a single word before shutdown. Too late. Fleet Command attempted to evacuate the throne world. None of the ships responded. Engines refused ignition. Navigation controls warped inward. Pilots began chanting lullabies in foreign tongues. Some stabbed out their own eardrums to stop hearing them. At the edges of Empire territory, things began to unravel. Communications with the forged stars failed. Colonies on the fringe reported hallucinations of an old woman walking through their dreams. Children called her babushka. Adults dreamed of walking trees. Birth rates surged unnaturally. Names long abandoned returned. Vasilisa, Ivan, Kashii. The Empire's cultures, long sterilized, began to mutate, not by design, by memory. Language changed. Ancient Earth idioms bled into alien dialects. Technology faltered in her presence. Not just failed, changed. A plasma rifle handled by a soldier stationed near her spontaneously converted into a wooden pestle. It exploded when fired into feathers. Attempts to terminate her were relentless. Nanoagents, vacuum exposure, antimatter compression. She reappeared each time, unbothered, in a rocking chair that no one placed. The Supreme Leader saw it all. He said nothing. He only watched as his empire became folklore. In desperation, the Empire called upon the Archivists, the last faction of galactic beings who remembered Earth from the outside. Forbidden knowledge keepers. The price was blood. The answer was simple. You cannot kill what lives in the story. You must end the story itself. The Emperor gave the order. Erase all records of her. Delete every file. Cleanse every memory. Destroy her completely and retroactively rewrite all data that reference humanity's mythic past. Initiate memory eclipse. The process began and failed. The deletion AI began laughing in a child's voice. Data cores turned to bread. The central archive floated upward as if caught in a breeze. Inside it, a new file grew, the crone and the emperor. No one wrote it, but everyone could read it. The Supreme Leader ordered the full extermination of the planet Earth. The fleet charged weapons. They fired. The beams returned, not deflected, reflected through something that no longer followed physics. 33 capital ships were destroyed by their own beams. One ship turned into a giant wooden spoon, complete with Galaxy-class thrusters and a crew of singing squirrels. None of this was reported, because there were no survivors. Baba Yaga walked through the capital district. No one stopped her, not because they feared her, because they forgot what fear was. Their minds slipped into a state between waking and myth where logic broke. She wasn't invisible. She was simply never seen. Statues of Supreme Leader began to erode spontaneously, not with weather, but with age. Thousands of years were in seconds. One statue melted into tallow. Another wept sap and crumbled into peat. Everywhere she walked, things remembered what they had forgotten. Grass grew through titanium. Rust conquered alloys designed to last eons. Birds returned that hadn't been seen in 3 centuries. Dead languages resurrected themselves in graffiti. Gravity learned to bend around her. The Emperor stood alone, not because his guards fled. They never existed. He remembered them yesterday. Today, there were only shadows. He faced her, and she entered the chamber without a word. She looked smaller than before. Or perhaps time made him smaller. He demanded to know what she wanted. She said, "You took the stars but forgot the stories." He offered trade. Galaxies, immortality, knowledge. She laughed again. This time, things shattered. Not glass. Realities. One by one, the timelines the Empire had culled, rebellions, lost cultures, dead worlds, began to bleed back in. Alternate histories collided. The Empire began remembering the people it erased. Their voices screamed through walls. Their memories flooded the data grid. The Empire itself began to remember Earth, not as a planet, but as a cradle, the source of its ancestors, its own origin. It began to grieve. The Emperor demanded a fight, said he would rather die than kneel. She nodded. "You will?" He charged. His armor failed. His strength collapsed inward. His scream was that of a child realizing he's alone. She did not touch him. She only watched as he aged, not in years, but in regret. He saw himself, not as a supreme leader, but as the boy who once read stories about witches in huts with chicken legs. He had once believed in heroes. He had once feared the forest. Then he forgot, and now it had returned. He fell to his knees. She kissed his forehead. "Now sleep?" He closed his eyes, and history changed, not erased, not destroyed. The stars were quiet, but not in peace. In absence. The Empire's communications relays pulse erratically, voices bleeding in from timelines no longer supposed to exist. Cartographers tore up their maps. Systems listed as loyal territories reported strange pulses in their suns. It wasn't rebellion. It was reversal. The structure of imperial control had been etched into reality itself, but the etchings were fading. The memory of the Empire cracked faster than its infrastructure. Its former subjects did not resist. They forgot, not out of fear, but because the story had moved on without them. Titles, ranks, bureaucracies, they unraveled. A high admiral opened his eyes and remembered a field of sunflowers on Earth, though he'd never visited. A governor threw away her crown after waking from a dream of forest that whispered in her grandmother's voice. Her influence did not spread like contagion. It emerged like a truth hidden beneath ice, thawing, slowly, inevitably. The Emperor was gone, not dead, not erased, folded into story, mentioned only in riddles. His name now appeared in myths as the boy king who challenged the crone. His fate differed in every telling. Sometimes he turned to ash, sometimes to a pine tree, once to a loaf of bread that cried when sliced. The stories refused consensus, as if reality itself now yielded to interpretation. The throne world became hollow, vacant but not abandoned. Her chair remained where she last sat. No one dared touch it. No one questioned why they feared a chair. Yet in every hall, footsteps echoed unevenly, as if someone else walked beside them, unseen, unspeaking. The council that tried to restore order found their words tangled. Protocol dissolved in their mouths, replaced by nursery rhymes. The intergalactic codex burned itself one page at a time, each word replaced by symbols, runes, shapes from childhood sketches. One page bore only a warning. She remembers what you forgot. Beyond the throne world, a resurgence of forgotten faiths erupted, not in temples, in kitchens, in stories, in lullabies. Cultures that had been standardized rediscovered their chaos. Some wept as they remembered lost grandparents. Others laughed as they realized they could dance again. The Empire's control mechanisms, once relying on precision and predictability, now failed under the weight of imagination. Ship AI systems began refusing orders if phrased without manners. Battle droids recited poetry instead of targeting data. One planetary defense grid renamed itself Vasilisa and began issuing bedtime stories as warnings. No violence followed. But no defiance succeeded either. In regions that once defined themselves by logic, children began drawing huts with legs. Their parents told them not to, but they did anyway, because they dreamed of her. Across space, Baba Yaga's name returned to languages where it had never existed. The translations varied: the Bone Mother, the Forest Crone, the Laughing One. None captured her entirely. All were accurate. She was no longer merely present. She was part of collective subconscious, a lurking figure behind every cautionary tale. Not malevolent, not benign. Beyond, other species tried to intervene. The Karate, believing themselves immune to myth, sent a thought-cauterization fleet. Their vessels arrived and disappeared. A century later, an asteroid sculpted to look like a skull, with chicken leg landing gear, drifted past a karate observatory. Inside, the words, "She feeds those who wander too far," were etched in every karate dialect. The Thulian collective, masters of probability manipulation, attempted to rewrite the odds of her influence. Every simulation collapsed into fractals. Their superintelligence entity, Haler, now only answered questions with stories of talking animals and tests of character. Its core glowed with symbols shaped like birch leaves. Resistance became irrelevant, not crushed, rendered meaningless. The galaxy didn't fight her. It adapted. War ceased not by treaty, but because tactics failed. Every strategy unraveled into absurdity. Fleets deployed only to arrive as parades. Artillery converted into musical instruments mid-firing sequence. Soldiers forgot their orders and began reenacting folk dramas. Generals were found baking bread with enemy civilians. Not by coercion, by instinct. Trade realigned. Currency shifted away from imperial credits to barter, favors, tales, and dreams. A market on the edge of the Vesper fields traded security clearance codes for recipes. Merchants who once sold genetic modifications now traded charms made from roots and bones. Even the black market, once driven by exploitation, became an exchange of forbidden myths. Buyers whispered riddles to gain entrance. Sellers swore on the names of ancestors. Authority figures sent spies, but the spies never returned unchanged. One returned and sang until his heart stopped. Scholars of the Empire, desperate to categorize the phenomenon, reached a conclusion they dared not publish. The galaxy had entered a folkloric epoch. Reality was no longer determined solely by equations. Intent, meaning, and memory mattered more. She didn't take power. She replaced the concept. Across systems, the language of power shifted. Empires spoke of might. But now, might didn't matter if the forest didn't allow you in. Command required wisdom. Leadership was tested not by military trial, but by humility before the unknown. In the vacuum left behind, small communities flourished. Interstellar travel did not cease. It changed. Ships began using natural materials, guided by stars instead of coordinates. Some vessels had chicken leg landing struts, not as tribute, but because it felt right. Pilots carried charms. Crews told stories before each jump. A new understanding arose. To travel far, one must carry home with them. The greatest remaining question was this: why had she come? Many offered answers. None were final. Some said she came because the Empire had become a machine that forgot its builders. Others said the galaxy had grown too cold, too rational, and she came reminded that fear, joy, and wonder must coexist. A few whispered that the Emperor himself, long ago, once called for her unknowingly, when he erased his own childhood to ascend to power. In one tale, an ancient root buried deep within the throne world stirred after millennia, waking her, not because it was time, but because something had forgotten its name. Whatever the truth, one fact remained unshaken. She had left. Not vanished, not defeated. Departed. Where she went, no one could say. Some claimed they saw her flying across a red moon in a mortar and pestle. Others said she returned to Earth, to the black woods, waiting. In her absence, the galaxy did not collapse. It found new rhythms. The Empire's remnants formed confederations built on storytelling and oral memory. Governance became collaborative. Fear diminished, not because threats vanished, but because meaning returned. People remembered who they were, and in remembering, they became something more. A new calendar began. Year one of the recollection. Not a new reign, a new remembering. In the far edges of space, beyond maps, children still spoke of her, not with dread, with reverence, not because they expected her, but because they knew someone must remember, lest she return.